today we are very honored to have once again as our special guest, Kelly Shackleford. Let me just read a little bit of his bio. Kelly Shackleford is president and CEO of First Liberty Institute, the largest legal firm in the nation dedicated exclusively to protecting religious freedom for all Americans. He has served in this role since 1997, leading First Liberty's efforts to defend religious freedom in the courts and in the public arena. Under his leadership, First Liberty's legal team has participated in cases before the United States Supreme Court, federal courts of appeals, federal district courts, and various state courts, where they have won more than 90% of their cases. Shackleford is a constitutional scholar who has argued before the United States Supreme Court, testified before the U.S. House and Senate, and has won a large number of landmark First Amendment and religious liberty cases, including a recent watershed, precedent-changing victory at the U.S. Supreme Court in the American Legion versus American Humanist Association. He was recently named one of the 25 greatest Texas lawyers, and that's pretty big for Texas, one of the 25 greatest Texas lawyers of the past quarter century by Texas Lawyer, and is the recipient of the prestigious William Bentley Ball Award for Life and Religious Freedom Defense for pioneering work and protecting religious freedom. Kelly, it is so good to have you back on Francis and Friends and Sun Life Broadcasting Network. How are you, my friend?
Doing wonderful. It's a great privilege to be back on.
You're out there fighting the good fight.
Amen. Amen. Unfortunately, there's a lot of it to fight these days.
Well, that's what we want to get right to. I had a couple of questions right off the top of my head. One involves the upcoming Supreme Court battle, but the first one I want to get to is with the lockdowns and some of the repressive attitudes of some of these governors. Do you have any idea how many churches in the United States are still closed?
No, I certainly don't have a number, but it's going to depend upon, which state. Every state has different, restrictions based upon who their governor is, or maybe even in some cases who your county officials are and who your health officials are. And there are lawsuits going on all across the country. When we started out with this, we won. We've had like 10 different cases during the pandemic on behalf of churches, and we won all of them. But there have been a lot of lawsuits filed that weren't necessarily maybe the wisest or the best timed or the right place, and it's created a lot of bad precedent to kind of counteract our good precedent. And it's just kind of a mess out there right now as to what the law is going to be. And the best way I can put it is we're in a battle right now over whether the government will control our churches. And we've got to win this battle. And there's I think some recent very encouraging news. Number one would be the case we just filed a few weeks ago in Washington, D.C. on behalf of a church where we've already won a really strong injunction. And that could make its way to the Supreme Court fairly quickly. And then the other piece of good news in my mind is I think we're close to having another justice on the Supreme Court who is a real, I think will be great on religious freedom on the Supreme Court. That's Amy Coney Barrett. And I feel like then we'll have the votes to certainly protect the church from these overreaches that are going on around the country.
The church in Washington, D.C. that you filed for, what church was that?
Calvary Baptist Church there. And it's Calvary Hill Baptist Church. What the people, it's hard to describe this because people like, that can't be true. It is true. The mayor, you've probably seen pictures of the mayor in Washington, D.C., out in protest with thousands of people, and that's legal. But the church, if they were to meet with 101 people outdoors, that's a crime. So there's no rationale for that. There's no way to defend that. And we went into court and got a federal injunction to say that that was unconstitutional and that the court protected the church and their right to open up, if they so desire, to have an outdoor service, which of course is very safe.
And Calvary, for those that don't know, is a very historic church. They've only missed, I think, 2 Sundays out of 100 and something years. of having church, right there by the White House, and it's a historic African American church, if I'm understanding correct.
No, it's just a mix of people
Okay.
across D.C. Great church, and the thing about it is, it's a church that really has been very safe. They want to protect their people. They do a lot of protocols. It was the last step for them to have to file something because the church, ecclesia is what the church is, right? I mean, it's about coming together.
Exactly.
And to tell them that they can't come together with even 100 people outdoors in a safe way, but to tell people that they could have thousands and thousands of people protesting. Look, they're not against. They think people should have a right to protest outdoors. No, there's nothing unsafe about that. They can do that in safe ways. But boy, the church is certainly going to care for their people and be safe. And so these kinds of restrictions that we're seeing, where you can go to the liquor store or the marijuana dispensary, you can do things outdoors, but somehow the church can't do things outdoors when the church is going to be very thoughtful and safe. That's just wrong. It's against the law. It's unconstitutional. And we're hoping we can get a good case to the Supreme Court because really the churches around the country want to do things safe. They want to open up. And these restrictions a lot of times are clearly discriminatory against the church, and they need to come down.
How dangerous, and this is what I want to get across to the viewing audience, if this election doesn't go right, where does that put religious freedom in your mind?
Well, this current administration has done a lot of different activities. I mean, we tried to collect them just to kind of get a list, and it was so exhaustive that it was literally, over 100 pages of different activities. You can go through almost every agency. So there's been a lot of advancement of religious freedom. You could kind of start with the courts, really. I think people understand that. In the past, the judges that have been picked for the court, a lot of it's been politics. It's been, hey, I helped you get elected president. My brother's an attorney, and they'd make a really good judge. And, hey, Senator so-and-so, his friend. And that's kind of how things were done. This president was the first one who ever kind of ran on the issue of, I'm going to actually appoint judges of a certain judicial philosophy, ones that are originalists is what we call it, which is they look to the original meaning of the text, whether that is a constitution, whether that is a statute. And you'd think that wouldn't be remarkable that they're looking to the original meaning, but that has not been the approach to a lot of these judges who think the Constitution is a living, breathing document that they can read into what they wish. Well, that philosophy has been followed through by the administration. They've picked those kinds of judges. There's been an exhaustive analysis of all the judicial candidates. It's been the most highly credentialed, really brilliant that we've ever had. Youngest judges ever appointed. We're now up to about 220 federal judges who have been confirmed for life under this administration. And I'm telling you, they're very different than we've had before. They're very committed to not being politicians, not being, a little legislator like the Supreme Court, which is what they're not supposed to be, but being judges and saying, you know what does the law say? What does it mean? What is the original meaning here? And you know what? If it's something that people are uncomfortable with, it's the job of the people through the legislative process to change that law, not judges in some back room. Right, exactly. And so they're beginning to really change things. This is a big difference, what's been happening. We have shifted, I think, probably the courts for the next 10, 15, maybe as much as 20 years with the judges we have been putting on the courts. And that would obviously begin to change if you had a different administration.
Right. I want to ask you about Amy Coney Barrett real quick. I go back all the way. I think I've watched at least portion of every Supreme Court judge that's had to appear before Congress since the debacle of Judge Bork. So that dates me all quite a bit back. And I have to be honest with you, I was not impressed with Justice Roberts when he sat before Congress. I had a very strong negative feeling toward him. I didn't feel like he was honest with the American public. Gorsuch, I felt a little bit better. Kavanaugh, I didn't really get a chance because that was just a back alley fight.
Circus.
And it was a circus, and we really didn't get to the full breadth. But this lady, Amy Coney Barrett, I have been absolutely blown away by her judicial knowledge and her ability to handle herself in a pressure that none of us know anything about, and not refer to booklets and law books and folders and binders.
It was amazing. At one time, they questioned her about her pad. She had a pad beside her.
Yeah, it was blank.
And she with this thing, and she shows a blank. Yeah. But it goes back to that debate where there was supposed to be some pads.
Yeah. So what should America know? I mean, I'm sure you're, based on what you said earlier, you're excited for this nomination. But give the viewers and the listeners right now even more information that would help them maybe call their congressmen and senators and say, we want this woman nominated to the bench.
Well, I think the good news is I think people had the same impression you did watching her confirmation hearing. There was a poll that just came out today from Gallup saying that the country is definitely in favor of having her go on to the court. She's brilliant. She's measured. I think one of the things that's not talked about much, she's also normal. You know, if you look at the Supreme Court, all of the justices right now are from Yale or Harvard. Right. She's going to blow that up.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing.
Right.
I think people looked at her. She's going to be she's got 7 children. People look at her and go, okay, I understand her, and she understands me. And she was attacked, of course, ridiculously because of her faith in her first confirmation hearing, because she actually takes her faith seriously. Of course, everybody knows that quote from Senator Feinstein where she said, the dogma lives loudly within you, and that's right. Of concern. So here's a woman of faith. If you watched her opening statement, it was obviously about the law and about her proper approach and about who she was and her children and her family. But if you saw towards the end, she mentioned the importance of prayer. And I just think that was just a little bit of a statement for her to say, I am who I am. I'm not ashamed of my faith. I'm not ashamed of the Lord. And I'm going to do what's right. And I'm going to stand for what's right. But I'm going to be a good judge. And I'm going to be an impartial judge. And I'm going to do things the way they should be. She is going to be, I think, a great justice on the Supreme Court. And it's because we're now picking people not based on politics or on who's somebody's friend. We're picking high quality individuals who will actually do their job as a judge and not begin to think that their job is to sort of decide what's good for the country like a legislator and enforce that on all of us. That's not the job of a judge. The judge is there to look at the original meaning of the law and to follow that and to put that in place and to make sure that we know what that is. They're not our kings. And as she said numerous times, she said it's not it's not King Amy or it's not the land of Amy. She's pointing out judicial restraint, so important, because you can imagine how tempting it would be if you're one of the justices and you could do whatever you want. Because you're appointed for life now. Nobody's going to remove you. You don't have to be up for a vote. Nobody's going to vote on whether you can do what you want. The temptation to do what you think is good by taking the law into your own hands is very tempting. So you've got to have people of great character and restraint who say, you know what, I might not like this law, but that's not my job. My job is to interpret it. And she is going to be excellent at that, I think, and is going to make a great justice. And I'll tell you, one of the other things that I found personally really moving is my daughter is in her mid-20s, is a very bright young lady. She's got a child, a 1-year-old, and she watched some of this hearing. And she said, Dad, I really like this woman. And what clicked to me is how many young Christian women have a role model who's an intelligent mother, who carries himself with the dignity and the class and the professionalism that this woman did. I thought, what a great thing that these young ladies have a role model like her as well. With all the horrible role models we've got out there, it's nice to have one really good one.
Exactly.
Yeah, we got a very good one. And Kelly, welcome. So we are so thrilled to have you on the program with us today. Let me ask a question. I'm looking here at one of your articles, and it says the Supreme Court will no longer tolerate government hostility to religious beliefs. That sounds wonderful. So what can we really expect?
Well, I tell you, I think things are changing in ways that most Americans, including most people of faith, have no idea. I try to, when I speak around the country, I try to let people know what's happening, because there's a great move of God going on right now when it comes to religious freedom. And I don't want to, get too academic with people, so let me do a quick summary for folks. There are two religion clauses, the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. They're the first part of our First Amendment. Both of them have a really bad case, a precedent that's been in place for in place for 50 years that have caused incredible damage to religious freedom in this country. And I'll just give you one example. Let's take the Establishment Clause, which says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Well, what was that about? The founders didn't want us to have a national established church that we all had to support, and therefore it would hurt our religious freedom. Well, 50 years ago, in a liberal Supreme Court, the Warren Court, said, no, it means more than that. And in this case called Lemon, they said it means separation of church and state. It means offended observers can now bring lawsuits. So if you're offended, you usually can't bring a lawsuit, but you can against religion if you're offended by religion. So our whole lives, we've seen a government that was hostile to religion. It's like if the religion is around government, there's almost like this let's sweep it out. And so we've seen nativity scenes under attack, Ten Commandments under attack, menorahs under attack. Any sort of religious symbol, even veterans memorials. And that is not because of the Constitution. The founders would be appalled that these attacks on religion were occurring. But that's what this Lemon case said. Well, we just had a Supreme Court decision. We had a case, the Bladensburg Cross. It's a memorial that was put up almost 100 years ago by mothers who lost their sons in World War I. And a lawsuit was brought by the American Humanists saying, you got to tear that down. You can't have a cross on government property. Sure enough, the Federal Court of Appeals, one of the judges said during the oral argument, why don't you just cut the arms off the cross? That way nobody will be offended and we won't have to tear it down. Wow. So we took that to the Supreme Court and said, okay, we could have gone for just the wind on this cross, but we realized, you know what? We looked up and we saw Justice Kavanaugh. He was really strong on religious freedom. Justice Kavanaugh, when he was a younger attorney, donated his time on religious freedoms cases that I was involved with him on. He's been committed a long time on religious freedom. Justice Gorsuch is very strong on religious freedom. And we thought, maybe it's time now that we have better justices who want to follow the original meaning of the Constitution, maybe we can get rid of Lemon, which has been there for 50 years, has caused all this hostility. And the Supreme Court ruled just a little over a year ago, 7-2, that cross was not coming down. But more importantly, and this is what people miss, 5-4, they ruled we're not following Lemon. And so for 50 years, we've been going in this hostility to religion direction. Yes. People don't understand this, but we just turned. We are now going in a completely different direction. We got to build it out. But I'm telling you, God is shifting history on its axis as far as religious freedom, and everything is in the process of changing. And if we do our job right, which we plan on doing over the next 5, 10, 15 years at First Liberty, every American is going to have more religious freedom than they've ever had in their lifetime. And that's a move of God.
Amen.
That's like a breath of fresh air. I mean, because we do these programs conscious of what we say or what we don't say or so forth and so on. So you can't imagine, well, maybe you can, though. You've been fighting this for a long time, but you can't imagine what that means to us as a religious organization, that to have the freedom that we should have, and as you said, that was originally planned for us in the Constitution in the beginning. So that sounds wonderful, Kelly. Did any one of the other gentlemen have a question? Okay, Carl.
I do. Kelly, I'm Carl Brown. It's good to meet you
Hi,
this
Carl.
way. You've made the comment about there is a move of God going on right now among the churches, and it's the Lord instituting that move, obviously, and that there has been a great attack upon religious freedoms in this country. And the church has been under great attack by the liberals of this nation. And I was wondering, I want to ask a question, then I want to make a point. Let me make the point first, and then I'll ask the question. I believe that move of God that's going on right now will be preparation for the end time harvest, for the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, which is not too very far in the future. Of course, nobody knows the day or the hour, but as we look at the signs of the times right now, we know that his coming won't be too very long. And the moving of the Spirit in the church right now, I believe, is preparing the church for the end time harvest. Now, my question would be this. Why do you believe, for the people that watch this program, why do you believe that there is such a antagonistic move against the religious movement in this country by the left? It is an all-out attack, but I wonder how many people really fully comprehend why that's happening.
Yeah, that's obviously a very it could be a really long answer. I'll just say this to kind of give people a little bit of a feel for what you're describing. 8 years ago, we had 48 cases. Last year, we had over 300 cases. The attacks on religious freedom are proliferating in ways that you can never imagine. The kinds of cases that we have are cases you couldn't even imagine would be cases. I mean, we've got synagogues and houses of worship under just vicious attack in the United States of America. So this is not something in some other country. This is in the United States, and people wonder, why is this? And I think it's there's a lot of answers to that. I think part of it is obviously there's something going on spiritually. But I think as people move away from God, they don't understand or appreciate religious freedom. And they don't understand that actually, if you lose religious freedom, you'll lose all your freedoms. I have people come to me from other countries all the time that tell me they're not even a people of faith, but they think that religious freedom is crucial, and they support our effort because they saw what happened in their country. They took down religious symbols, and within weeks or months, they all lost their political freedoms. And I think we see it really now when we see this sort of Marxism beginning to come into our country, which really relies on violence and upheaval. What you find in these countries that engage in this type of government is you can't have the church. The church is not allowed. These kinds of intermediary institutions like the family and the church get in the way of the authority of the government over every individual. And so there's always an attack. Those always go hand in hand. So sometimes people think, I'm not going to watch what's going on. The government's not important. It is important. It's very important to what freedom you have. It's very important to whether you're going to have freedom to worship the Lord and to tell people about that. But we're seeing really levels of hostility like we've never seen. I mean, I think a lot of people saw the monuments that were being attacked and pulled down. What I don't know that everybody was paying attention to was that a number of those monuments weren't like historical figures. Right. They decapitated statues of Jesus. Right. They went after Paul. And I mean, this stuff was happening at churches. Churches were being defaced around the country. So that there's definitely, and I'll tell you one more thing. Again, I'm kind of scattering around because there's so many answers, Carl, to where this is coming from. But I'll give you one example. I happened to be at the White House the night that there was a speech by the president. They did the fireworks. I don't know. A lot of people saw this on TV. And there was a talk from the White House lawn. There was right in between the White House and the Washington Monument. And as I left, there was a crowd. You know, I wouldn't say they're protesters. They weren't protesters. I could immediately feel when I walked out, because I've been in this battle for 31 years and I've seen this before. There was an incredible demonic presence as I walked out of that White House. And a lot of people ended up seeing this on video, like Rand Paul and others, but there were groups of people surrounding people as they left. I'm talking 85-year-old white-haired women that people were getting an inch away from their face and screaming the most vile things you've ever seen in your life. This was not a protest. This was a incredible spiritual evil collected, and these people were not of their own facilities. And so there is much more than just sort of politics or government or whatever. There's a spiritual battle going on, and I don't know why God is doing this. I know he's opening religious freedom in ways I've never seen and in ways I didn't think I could accomplish in my lifetime that we're now starting to have success in. I don't know whether it's because a revival's coming or whether it's because it's going to get so hostile that we're going to need this protection. I just know that God is doing it, and it's incredibly encouraging to not only see, but to be a part of.
Yes. We got to take a quick break, Kelly, and we'll be right back.
Email your questions and comments about today's program to onair@jsm.org.
Thank you for your support for the Sun Life Broadcasting Network.
I want you to look at these, which we're offering. These are DVDs. The Truth About Catholicism, an expose on the religion of Islam, The Truth About Common Core, The Truth About Seventh-day Adventists, The Truth About Islam, which is an interview with Brigitte Gabriel, The Truth About the Masons, and then The Truth About Mormonism and The Truth About Jehovah's Witnesses. Any one of these for just $10, any three for $25. Now listen to this, all 8 for just $50. Every Christian needs to know what these cults are all about, and I think this will help you to understand it. Now this is Jimmy Swaggart saying I'm asking you to take advantage, and I'm waiting for your call.
Take advantage of this offer by calling or going online to shopjsm.org.
If you're looking for a great school in Baton Rouge, we'd like you to consider Family Christian Academy. Tuition costs are very competitive. FCA offers the Abeka curriculum for K-4 through 5th grade and does not teach Common Core. FCA is an ACT testing site and offers honors and advanced placement courses. Discover Family Christian Academy. Call 225-768-3026 or visit fcacademy.net.
If you have children in your home, and I'm talking smaller children, younger children, then we have something available on SBN today that you don't want to pass you by. First of all, it is our children's CD entitled Color Me a Story, where Dad takes some of the more exciting Bible stories that kids are prone to listen to and like, and puts them in a way that it is a delight for the entire family. And then our Read and Grow Picture Bible. Over 1,000 color illustrations that you'll find in the Read and Grow Picture Bible. Now, we put them all together for a special price of just $25. $25 for both the CD and the Read and Grow Picture Bible. Now, you can call, you can write, but we would prefer that you go online. And if you have children in the house, you don't want to miss out on this special offer.
You're watching the Sun Life Broadcasting Network.
Join Francis and Friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Francis Swaggart.
Okay, we're back. Let me ask a quick question, Kelly, and then I understand that you have a clip that you want to play, and we will do that right after this. But let me ask a question. We have had several unfavorable court decisions for the Christian community. What can be done about that? in the
Well,
past?
yeah, it's you can do a couple of things. Number one, you can bring lawsuits to try to get those things corrected. I mean, that's why First Liberty is here. So if if we've got a lot of churches right now and synagogues that we're representing who are being told they can't meet, and some of it's COVID, some of it's just hostility by local communities that are trying to push the church out of the community. And I could tell you some story. Well, I'll tell you one real quick. And so they need to know they have a place to call. They can call us. They can get help. The other answer to your question, Francis, is if we get better judges, we'll get better decisions. Yes. And that's been what I know we've been working on that. In addition to all of our cases, working on vetting all these judicial possibilities so that the president's team, his administration, can pick really good judges like an Amy Coney Barrett to go on the court. So those are ways you make real changes. But I'll give you one example. We've got a church that we represent that is in Waltill, Nebraska. How this happened is an Indian, a woman who is Native American Indian, was at a conference, a pastor's conference over in Ireland, and she said, nobody will come and bring Jesus to my area. And she wept. And this one guy just couldn't get it out of his mind. I mean, God just wouldn't allow him to shake it over the next 3 months. And the next thing he knew, he was picking up his wife and his family from Ireland, and they were moving into the middle of nowhere, Waltill, Nebraska, to open a church.
Wow.
And that church has just taken off. And at this point, 10% of the city is coming to their Wednesday night Bible study.
Wow.
Lives are being redeemed. There's a dark, sometimes cloud over these reservations where there's alcohol and drug abuse and, other kinds, sexual and other abuse. Their lives are being freed. They're getting redeemed. They're even training now people from these Indian reservations to go and be missionaries at other Indian reservations. So guess what's happening? The city council has decided they don't like this new power structure in the city, so they are trying to zone them out of the city so that they can't have their church. And not only that, they've gotten so hostile that as they're driving into church, they're having bricks thrown at their cars. It's gotten so bad that the Justice Department has had to intervene along with us in fighting against these attacks on religious freedom. So I just want people to understand these things are not just happening in like some other country. We have cases all over the country where we're having to fight for things. And the good news is, I just want to make sure people know this, the good news is we've been doing this for a long time. And for decades now, we've had over a 90% win rate in our cases every single year. This country was built on religious freedom. The law is there to protect us. We just have to be willing to stand, or else that freedom will be taken away from us.
Yeah, and I'm aware of what is going on to a certain extent, but what about our Christian businesses? They're not churches, but the people that own these businesses, they do have convictions. And there are just some things that they cannot do or will not do, and we have seen them in the headlines of the news being prosecuted because they would not do certain things for a certain segment of the community. So how is that going?
Well, I think it's going pretty well. We got to get a case to the Supreme Court to ultimately get this decided. But I'll give you one example. Our case, Sweet Cakes, which is Melissa Klein, she started a bakery and she made great baked goods. She eventually got enough to where they could have a business, and she had a same-sex couple come in. This is Melissa Klein in Oregon, and they said, we want to buy baked goods from you. And she said, I'll sell you anything you want. So she didn't discriminate against anybody, but she made wedding cakes she did custom wedding cakes, made them specifically for the couples based upon, she would use biblical backgrounds to that. She would do it out of her faith. And so this same-sex couple eventually came to her and said, we'd like you to do a custom wedding cake for our wedding. And she said, well, I'm sorry I can't do that because of my faith and the biblical approach I take, but I'm happy to send you to somebody who do a wonderful job. And she did that. The next thing she knew, the state of Oregon was coming after her. She was fined $135,000. Her business was bankrupted that she was planning to pass on to her kids. She was ordered by the judge not to speak publicly her beliefs about marriage because that might cause mental anguish to the two plaintiffs in the lawsuit. Well, that's just a massive violation of the First Amendment. But unfortunately for her, she lives in Oregon, and it's a very liberal state, very hostile on these issues. And so we represented her, Melissa Klein, and Sweet Cakes, and we had to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court got the case and immediately vacated the decision below, threw it out, and sent it back down and said, why don't you try this again, this time looking at the religion clauses of our Constitution. So it was a pretty strong hint. But it's not over. We still have to go through that process. But I say this because this is one example. Melissa and Aaron, her husband, they were offered to move to Texas, Louisiana, or somewhere where their bakery would be booming instead of bankrupt. But you know what? For 7 years, they've been in this litigation. Their kids have gotten death threats, all this. Why? Because they know if they move, their case goes away. And they know that millions of Christians are depending upon them to win this case and make sure that every Christian has a right to run their business according to their faith without the government interfering in that. And so they're staying true. So pray for people like Melissa Klein and Sweet Cakes. And there are other cases like this, and we're going to get one of these soon to the Supreme Court, which kind of brings us back to what we talked about earlier, Francis, which is why it's so important that we have good justices up there who actually want to enforce the actual words of the Constitution and not play politics or act like they're some sort of legislature. We need them to enforce the constitutional freedoms that we all have and make sure that we're all protected, whether the government likes somebody's beliefs or not.
Right. Well, you know, Kelly, if this upcoming election does not go right and the wrong person gets into office, we're going to see the Constitution of the United States challenged in a very strong way. Yes. I mean, a very strong way. And incidentally, I have seen some cases, I would be reading about them, and there was Kelly and his group of lawyers that were, and I said, thank God, every time I read his name, I said, they will get good representation by the law. But when you've got judges against you, you've got governors against you, and above that, the Attorney General that is intent on putting you out of business. Now, we know through God's help that he can do anything. But I see some of these businesses, as well as the churches, they are really hurting because of rulings in the court of law that has gone against them, and humongous fines being assessed to themselves personally or to their business, sometimes to both.
Well, you're right. We're in a battle. We're clearly in a battle right now, and we've got to win the battle. So I would encourage people, number one, to be in prayer. But I do want to encourage people a little bit. The way we do our cases is different. Most of the nonprofit groups that exist in the United States, left wing, right wing, whatever their issue is, they raise money, hire attorneys, put them on staff, and then they have those attorneys from New York or LA or wherever, and they fly around and cover as many of their cases as they can cover. That is not our model. Our model is the body of Christ, which is what we do is we find all these people who went to law school because they're people of faith and they wanted to make a difference. And, 30 years later, these are the most powerful litigators at the most powerful law firms in our country, really in the world. And they've done honorable work for their clients, but they've never gotten to do a case for the kingdom. We sit down with them, we say, look, if we give you everything you need, are you willing to give your time on one of these cases? And they're like, I've been waiting 35 years, sign me up. We know what's going to happen when we give them that first case. All their talent, their gifts, all that they've learned are finally lined up with the kingdom. They've never felt that before. Yeah. And it's kind of unfair, but we now know we have them for the rest of their lives as one of our volunteer attorneys because they're going to have to do another one of these. And they give cover to the younger attorneys who get to taste what it's like. So we have a network. If you go through the top 100 law firms in the United States, most of those law firms don't just donate their time; they'll fight each other at times over who gets to donate their time on our cases. So
That's
we have
fantastic.
litigators. We have litigators everywhere. We can put a dream team together within 15 minutes anywhere in the United States when religious freedom comes under attack. So I just want to encourage people. The body of Christ is incredibly powerful, and this method we have the most talented and people that you could never pay for. You know, a lot of them charge $1,500 an hour in their normal cases, and we got a team of them, and they're all donating their time. So I encourage people. We're in a battle, and it's a mean battle, and the enemy certainly is not playing. But
He's not. And we've got to do what you said, join together. We've
Yes.
got to be together in this. Let me read it. I've got a number of emails that are coming in with questions to you, Kelly. So let me ask one right now. It said, hello, Francis and friends. Said, good morning, Kelly. How much damage does the unconstitutional statement and belief that there should be a separation of church and state having on this culture opposing God and all things religious? Is a pro-life position inclusive of the whole life, from the blessings of God's creation, the birth of blessed children, through life, back to the grave, and back into the arms of our Creator? Or is it just for the unborn, such as homeless, prisoners, the poor, the abandoned, the drug addict, the drunkard, single parents, and so forth? And they're asking how much protection?
Yeah, the issue of separation of church and state is an important one because it's not in the Constitution. Of course, the Constitution doesn't use those words. It's a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. He wasn't even at the Constitutional Convention. So, as a concept, most of us would agree we don't want the government trying to take over the church. We don't want the church taking over the government. But what the Constitution says is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. In other words, we didn't want an established national church, and because that would take away from religious freedom. But what they've tried to pervert the whole concept of separation of church and state into is sort of a what I would call a fundamentalist separation of church and state, secularist approach, which is wherever the government is, religion can't be. Well, government's everywhere now. So that's just a way to sort of push religious freedom into the corners of society. Founders were never in favor of that. And so a lot of the, what this person is asking about with separation of church and state, I mentioned earlier, has really been changed by this opinion, the Bladensburg Cross case that involves the Lemon case. That's where that test was coming from, that was forcing that sort of hostility to religion that was a result of that kind of extreme separation. That is now not the precedent that the court is following after our Bladensburg Cross case, which is why it's such a big shift. On the other issue of life, I would say, I was just speaking yesterday at a group because a lot of the pro-life groups, sometimes they get criticized. Hey, yeah, you're all here about protecting life, but what about when they come out? What are you doing to protect and care for, little children who are born? And so this was a ministry I was speaking to yesterday that had done that. And they're actually going into poor neighborhoods with doctors in these doc in a box or docs in these sort of these RVs and all that. And they're serving these little children. And so we've got to protect life. I thought one of the most powerful statements of life by Amy Coney Barrett was the testimony that was given by the person the day after her testimony. I don't know if you saw this, the blind young woman.
Yeah.
Because that powerful testimony, and people didn't see it. Basically, it's a blind law student who, because the bureaucracy there at the university had messed up and she didn't have backups for some programs that she needed to be able to see and hear what everybody else could do and take her notes and do what she needed to do. she was beginning to fall behind because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And she mentioned it to Professor Amy Coney Barrett and said, I know this is not your problem, but I want you to be aware. Amy Coney Barrett's response is, it's my problem now, which blew her away. And I thought that was such a testimony to exactly what you're talking about, Francis, with these questions. If you believe in the protection and the sanctity of life at the beginning and at the end, you're also going to believe in it in the middle. And so when somebody comes to you like this, you see the sanctity of her life, the value of her life made in the image of God, and this is how you love people. If you instead go to this, oh no, we don't care about life at the beginning or the end, you're going to see coarseness and a disvaluing of life in the middle as well. And so I thought Amy Coney Barrett was a great witness, not only for, that she was pro-life in her personal life from the standpoint of abortion, but by the testimony she gave of how she treated people. And that young lady, by the way, was the first person ever to be a clerk for a justice at the United States Supreme Court as someone who was blind. And she said it would have never happened if it wasn't for Amy Coney Barrett.
That was very touching and very moving. I'm glad I got to see it. Let me read this email. It said, Mr. Shackleford, I live in New Jersey, and our Democratic governor, Phil Murphy, will not allow us to vote by machine unless you're handicapped or have a doctor's note. He expects us to fill out provisional ballots instead. Now, I think many people do not trust paper ballots because they believe the Democrats are not going to run an honest election. The governor is using COVID-19 as an excuse for not letting people vote by machine. I fear that this will discourage people from voting, something that I believe Governor Murphy is hoping for. My question, does he have the right legally and or constitutionally to keep us from voting by machine? If you say yes, well, what then gives him this right? If you say no, is there a way to force him to allow machine voting? It is my belief that this is the governor's way of suppressing and eliminating votes for President Trump.
Yes, let me start out by pointing out that the whole issue of sort of election law and voting, all that's not my area of expertise. I'm a religious freedom lawyer, and that's what I've done for 31 years. But I'll point out that the Constitution says, has the election for federal offices like president and Congress and Senate, but it does leave to the states how to do those elections. People have to be given the right to vote and participate. You can't discriminate in the way you do that. But if you'll notice, states are different in how they do their elections. And some states allow mail-in ballots and have done so for a number of years. Some states don't. There's different ways to make sure that those are valid. So I would just point out that law is different. Now, there have been a myriad of lawsuits being filed all over the country between the Democratic and the Republican Party about this. The Republican Party has won most of those, but there have been attempts in a lot of states to try to change the rules right before the election using COVID-19 as the reason for that. Most of those have been unsuccessful. But let's just take yesterday what just happened, which is in Pennsylvania, they asked if they could count the mail-in or the absentee ballots, even if they came in 2 or 3 days after the election. And the decision by the Supreme Court was 4-4. It was a locked tie. You had the liberals and Roberts voting with the Democrat side and the 4 more conservatives voting with the Republican side. And the result of that is that in Pennsylvania, they will count ballots. Assume they're postmarked by the election day, they will count them up to 3 days after the election. And so these things are being decided state by state. I would just say this for people: if you can vote in person, vote in person. That's the most assured way that your vote will be counted. A lot of the mail-in ballots, there are rules to that. There are signatures required. A lot of people will mess something up and their ballot won't be counted. So the most assured way to have your vote count is to vote in person. If you can't, or if it's not safe for you to do so, maybe you're someone who has a medical condition where it's not a good idea, then make sure you follow the rules for how you do your absentee or your mail-in ballot, depending upon what your state laws say, because you want your ballot to count.
Yes, and we've got to go to another break, and I didn't get your clip in. I'll do that right immediately after the break. So
Great.
much I want to say, or I don't want to listen to what he has to say. But we're going to quit break, and at this time you can call in if you want to speak with Kelly Shackleford personally. Your questions must be short and to the point. That number is 800-342-8430, a toll-free number. You don't pay for the call, we do. And whether you agree with what's being said or you disagree with what's being said, we welcome you to call us today. Now, we'll be right back after the break.
Truth. Sometimes it's hard to find. That's why there's Francis and Friends.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pastor Gabriel Swaggart, and we've got a very special Jimmy Swaggart book offer that you need to have in your library. Both of these books are absolutely compelling. When you begin to read these two books, you're not going to want to put them down. The first book is entitled Rape of a Nation. This is a must read. The second, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil. Both of these books will give you information about the Word of God and about the state of the nation that you need to know. $30 for both books. Go online and pick up your copies right now.
Take advantage of this offer by calling or going online to shopjsm.org.
One of the most unique daily devotionals you'll find anywhere is the Expositor's Word for Every Day. You'll get a message for every day of the year. All messages have a focus on the cross of Christ. Messages that deal with modern day problems and how to apply the Word of God. In the Expositor's Word for Every Day daily devotional, you'll get a wealth of doctrine to help strengthen and encourage your daily walk with the Lord. It's classic music CDs from evangelist Jimmy Swaggart. Music that lives forever. Like the 1998 classic, You Won't Leave Here Like You Came.
You won't leave here like you came, Jesus' name.
How about the 1999 CD, He Was Nailed to the Cross for Me?
He was nailed to the cross for me.
From 2001, the Jimmy Swaggart classic, More About Jesus. And from 2003, Then Jesus Came.
I claim Jesus first of all. He'll answer when I call.
To purchase these classic music CDs from evangelist Jimmy Swaggart, call 1-800-288-8350 or get it online at sunlifetv.com.
One of the most powerful messages that Gabriel ever preached, which he did at Family Worship Center just a short time ago, is the right to life.
When a nation strays from God, human life is of little value.
It deals with this problem of abortion, and every
It is a wonderful way to stimulate a child's thirst for God's Word. This coloring book series is available exclusively through Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. Color Me a Bible Story.
It's more than just a coloring book.
–
Do I have a special offer for you? 9 different CD, DVD combos. Some of them are music, some of them are preaching, some of them are teaching. Now, all of these CD, DVDs normally retail for $30 each. But in this very special television offer, $15 each. That's 50% off the regular retail price. And I guarantee you there's something here for every single tape. Whether you want to hear preaching, whether you just want to hear stories behind the song, whatever it may be, it's available. Now listen, you can call, you can write to us, but the easiest thing to do is go online, www.sunlifetv.com, and take advantage of this 50% off special CD, DVD offer.
The Sun Life Broadcasting Network is seeking Spanish and Portuguese translators. If Spanish or Brazilian Portuguese is your native language, this could be an exciting opportunity for you. We are looking for born-again believers that are passionate about the work of God to help us in our worldwide ministry. If you have strong communication skills, we want to hear from you. Send your resume to humanresources@jsm.org. No phone calls, please. Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, an equal opportunity employer.
Taking the message of the cross to the world. This is the Sun Life Broadcasting Network.
Previous Francis and Friends programs are available online at sunlifetv.com.
Okay, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. And you know, Kelly, I see here that you're being featured in a Dinesh D'Souza's new movie.
Yes, that's he came out with a Trump Card, which is a new movie, and I think it's available through streaming where people can go online, and I think it's $4, and they can stream it through all kinds of different services. And he interviewed me with regard to religious freedoms issues, and it's a documentary on our country and are we sliding towards socialism? And I guess I'm there to kind of talk about more of the religious freedom side of things. And it was an honor to be a part of his movie. He's a very a thoughtful guy.
Yeah, we had him with us here about, 6 weeks or something. Our people loved him, and we're looking forward to having him back. You said you brought a clip of something to play on the program?
I want to show people, I think, an example of kind of the heart of the kind of cases we have. It's only a 3-minute video, but it's one that if I told you about, you'd probably go, I just can't believe that's true. And it's one of our newest cases. It's a young lady who slowly went blind, and the thing that she realized that was the most important to her was that people know about Jesus. So what she does is, every day with her walking cane, she finds her way across the street from her apartment into the public park. And if people come near her, because she can't see them, she has some copies of the Gospel of John, and she'll say, would you like a copy of the Gospel of John?
Praise God.
And they have now banned her from the city park and the library for 2 years for sharing a copy of the Gospel of John. So I want people to see this woman because I think it's an example of the battle that we're in.
Okay, let's watch.
Nursing was it for me. It was my identity. I did everything. If I could help them get a job or an apartment, my husband says that I am a frustrated social worker. January 7th, 1984, I actually had been going to a Bible study on the book of John, and it opened my heart to the Word of God being the answer, the truth. It was the best day of my life. I actually was born with a genetic disorder, retinitis pigmentosa, and I still continued nursing until I couldn't anymore because of my vision loss. If somebody ever said to me, hey, you could have your eyesight, but you have to, get rid of Jesus, I'd say, no deal. Wherever I go, I try to hand this out to people. So it's 21 chapters of the gospel. I get around with my cane to cross the street to go in the park. Going into a park to talk with people is a pleasure, first of all, but knowing that eternal life is real and people don't know that they're in danger, people have been saved in the park. I've had more of a reaction from the staff in the park that was not too nice, like they would interrupt me. There's plenty of people to talk to. I don't have to be going after anybody. I couldn't. It would be a tripping hazard for me. I was sitting on a bench with a man that I was conversing with. The executive director comes over and he says that he was going to call the police. And that's the start of the 2-year ban, even from the library, which that was a little bit of a surprise to me, that they would ban me from both the park and the library on passing out one of the 66 books of the Bible that you have in your library that people can check out. I guess my heart is broken, that I can't do what the Lord has told me to do. So if you want to say that I think about daily the lost souls. I think the Lord has positioned me right across from the park. It's a divine assignment that I absolutely need to fulfill. It's just a must.
Okay, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Did someone turn her in or something?
The park officials came, and the next thing she knew, she had the police visiting her, and she was banned from the park and the city library for 2 years. And we're not going to stop until she's back in that park. And I just love that, she sees this is God's assignment. As she went blind, that's where she is, right across in the park. She's got an assignment to do, and with all the chaos going on around the country and the violence, boy, this is the answer right here. People like Gail Blair, and we need to stand with her. And if I would tell your folks, if they want to stand with her, send us a note. We'll send it on to her. Get involved in her case, support it financially, pray for her. I would just encourage people to get behind her because we're going to stay with her till the very end.
Well, I'm going to encourage them to do that very thing. I look and I see all the rioting, the tearing up, breaking into cars, breaking into stores, stealing, robbing.
Burning Bibles.
Yeah, and they allow that to happen, but they're going to ban a blind lady from going into the park. Think about what I'm saying.
It's crazy.
That's evil. That is just evil, Kelly.
Jesus said to the disciples, the world will hate you, but they'd hated me first. So that's the reason for it, is they despise the gospel and Jesus Christ and what he did for us at Calvary.
Well, Kelly, did somebody that she talked to turn her in or and complain? Or how did this come about?
The park officials didn't like her out there, and they would come and interrupt her conversations and just try to cause her. They just didn't like what she was talking about. They thought it disrupted.
They were God haters.
Yes, and that's what I love about this is the body of Christ. Right? She's doing exactly what God's called her to do. And now attorneys from all over the country who are believers in Jesus Christ are standing with her, some of the most powerful attorneys in the country, to make sure that the body of Christ stands with their sister and make sure that she gets a victory. And when that happens, which I fully expect we will eventually get a victory, it'll not only protect Gail Blair, but it'll be a protection and a precedent that will protect every believer across the country to go into a park or anywhere else and share the gospel with somebody.
Right. What city is this?
It's in Rhode Island. I can't even pronounce the city. I'm not good with the word. Like Rehoboth Beach.
But you know, Kelly.
Oh, I know. I know the town you're talking about. Yeah.
But this is something I'm going to encourage all of our listeners to send your letters and your emails and your response to First Liberty Institute.
I think it's Rehoboth Beach.
Yes.
Yeah. And if anybody's watching that area, anybody from Rhode Island that's watching, you need to be writing the city of that Rehoboth Beach and complain.
That's exactly right.
And take these people on. This is ridiculous.
Sister Swaggart, when you begin to penetrate the forces of darkness, that's when these kind of things happen. Donnie was asking the question, who turned her in? Well, the demonic spirits get involved and get people agitated, and they don't know why they're attacking this lady. I remember in a small city, Teresa and I went to pastor a church, and we would have people on the streets in the roughest parts of the neighborhood winning souls. And the stores in that area called the police and addressed our people and told them to get off the streets, that they could not present the gospel. And they called me and asked me what to do. And I said, well, don't get on the church's property, but do it where you can. And the police shouldn't be able to bother you with that. And they were successful in doing that. And they were continuing to confront people and win them to the Lord. Whenever the darkness is penetrated, that's when you're going to get the roughest response from the powers of darkness.
Yeah, I've said ever since we've been on this program, talking about the Apostle Paul and all the disciples, but especially Paul in the book of Acts, everywhere he went, two things always happened. There was a revival and then there was a riot. And it hasn't changed. People still get angry because when the Holy Spirit deals with them,
that's right,
they will either respond and get right with God, or they will get angry.
That's right.
And start a riot.
And the Apostle Paul is a good example.
Yes.
How many times was he thrown in prison?
And stoned?
Many
times. Many.
Left for dead.
But that's what was in the past. We supposedly grew up and got away from that, become educated, and become smarter than trying to throw people in prison. But it looks like we're reverting right back to the same thing.
It's because our founding fathers founded this country with biblical principles. That's why we have the freedom that we have.
Right.
Yes,
they still are being persecuted.
That's another reason the demonic powers are so strong in Washington, D.C. I was in Washington in I think it was 1996, 97. There was a 1 million man march there with Christians, and I was there. And I didn't sense what I sensed when Teresa and I went back in 2012. We were there for 7 days, and you could feel the demonic powers in Washington, D.C. And that's why anything that remotely refers to religion or God or Jesus Christ is immediately attacked, because that power, which the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in high places. And Washington is definitely a place where those demonic spirits congregate, especially in these end times.
And Carl, based on what you said, think about what the President of the United States encounters every day of his life.
That's exactly right.
For trying to defend Christians.
That's right. I'm encouraged, Sister Swaggart, that I believe that a great portion of the church is praying for the president. I just sense that when I seek the Lord in prayer, I just sense that a great number of people are holding this president up in prayer.
Praise God for that.
Francis, I'll add something too that's kind of been interesting during this pandemic. We've had all these cases and shutdowns and things going on around the country. And as I mentioned, we've had, I think, 10 different legal actions now, and we've won all of them during the pandemic on behalf of our churches. But I got a call from, and I've got a number of these, but I'm thinking of one in particular, from businessmen in California saying, these lockdowns are destroying our business. We've seen that you've won all your cases, should we file a lawsuit here? And my answer to them was, no, you shouldn't, because the church is protected by our most fundamental rights: free speech, free exercise of religion, freedom of assembly in our First Amendment. These are our most fundamental rights. If the church can't win, you have no chance. And what's been amazing is to watch everywhere we've won, when the church wins, within days, the businesses are opened.
Wow.
It's incredible how the church is leading, and it's up to the church. But when the church wins, freedom gets dispersed to everybody, and it's fun to see how the Lord does that.
Amen. That's tremendous. Let's go to our first caller today, Connie from Texas. Connie, you have a quick question for Kelly Shackleford?
Yes. Kelly, I just want to thank you very much for the service you do. I've been a supporter of yours financially and in prayer for many years, and I work out at the Johnson Space Center here in Houston, and we have an online newspaper, and it has articles of events coming up, the LGBT group. They have all their announcements, and it's full all the month of June for Pride Week and all that. Well, we have a Bible club, and the founder of the Bible club always would use the name Jesus. We would say allied with Jesus. Well, the administration came down on us, this was about 3-4 years ago, and said we could not use the name Jesus. We could say that we had a Bible club and that kind of thing, but we could not use his name. So you sent an attorney down to meet with a group of us, and you wrote a letter to the administration at JSC, and they backed off. And ever since then, we've been able to use the name Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
You guys do this work pro bono, and I'm a testimony that you are good stewards of your money, and I thank you for your work.
Man.
That's excellent. Thank you, Connie. Let's go to Brian in Oklahoma.
Hello, Kelly.
Hi.
Hi. Listen, I was wondering, you're familiar with the 1947 Everson versus Board of Education, which basically gave us separation of church and state? And that was a 5-4 decision. Is there a chance that that case would be looked at again, since there really was no precedent given in that?
Well, I think Everson was sort of the beginning of what led to the Lemon case. If you look at Lemon, which was 1971, it was really building off of Everson and this idea of separation, and that you had to separate government and religion in extraordinary ways that the founders, I don't think, would agree with. That led to Lemon. And as I mentioned earlier, that Lemon case is probably cited, 50,000 times in the last 50 years. And if you'd asked me 4 years ago, can you get rid of Lemon in your lifetime that's caused all this hostility to religion for anything in public, I would have said, probably not in my lifetime. I can't get rid of it. But we can chip away at it and try to allow more freedom. I think the Bladensburg Cross case, the official name of that case, by the way, is the American Legion versus the American Humanist Association. I think in that victory we got at the Supreme Court, I think Lemon is over. One of the first cases to follow that was a case out of Pensacola about a cross there, and the decision from the Federal Court of Appeals, one of the first lines in the decision is, quote, "Lemon is dead." So I think in doing that, I think Everson is somewhat dead too. So I think we're going a whole new direction like you're wanting. And you don't have to go back and sort of overturn all the really old opinions that led up to that Lemon test that was being used. I think just getting rid of that bad Lemon test that was causing all this hostility to religion is what we're really after. But we do have to build out the positive of what it really means, what the Constitution really says, and it's not this hostility. Well, what is it? And that's going to be our job over the next 10 to 20 years, and hopefully with some new justices on the Supreme Court that really care about religious freedom, that'll try to do that.
Okay, well, sounds great. And any comments on the Engel Vital or Abington Schimpf in 6263? Does that figure into Lemon? Because that was sort of a offshoot of Everson.
Yeah, that's a little different. That's about, if people don't know, that's about having prayer over the loudspeakers or whatever during the day, or having a Bible reading to start at public schools. Lemon, that'll be one of the next things. Is lemon has been used in a lot of different arenas to sort of create a hostility to religion. The monument and the sort of public displays is one area. What's going to happen now is be worked out over the next 10 or 20 years is going to be how that works in other areas like schools and like the workplace and all these other applications of that. And so that's going to be the battle we're in, is trying to get back to what the founders really meant. And that's the thing that's so wonderful about originalism. You know, we're appointing all these judges and justices now who are, quote, originalists, which means they think they might disagree, but they think their job is, and this is unusual, they think their job is to find the original meaning. And when it comes to the Constitution, that means, what does this mean? What did the founders mean? That has not been the approach for a long time. It's been 1934 was the last time we had a majority of reliably conservative justices who actually had the proper judicial role. So it's been a long time, and we're about to have that. And it's going to take us back to those founding constitutional principles as they were written, and not as sort of political correctness or whatever the thought of the day would want to make them to be. And I think that's going to be a good thing for religious freedom.
Oh, boy. And then this latest Supreme Court justice has just been appointed. That's going to be great.
She hasn't been appointed yet. But
well, we feel like she's going to be appointed. Brian, I hope that answered your question.
Well, it sure did, Francis, and thank you for your show, and God bless all of you.
Thank you, Brian. Let's go to Rodney in Texas. That's your home state, Kelly. Rodney from Texas, you have a question for Kelly Shackleford?
Yes, ma'am, I sure do. I have a short statement. I'm an 82-year-old male citizen of the United States, and I've watched over the years as the attacks of Satan on our religious freedom have become more and more. And I just want to thank God for SBN, this Kelly Shackleford, for leading the way, because we can't get this anywhere else. And you folks just keep up the good work, and we thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for calling, Rodney. Let me ask a question of Kelly Shackleford. He is a constitutional lawyer, as we know, and won land cases. Concerning the political left, the Democrats that are threatening to pack the court if they are elected, is there anything that could be done by the others that would prevent that from happening?
Well, let me first explain to people, Francis, what that is, because some people aren't clear. Packing the court means adding numbers of justices, right? We've had 9 justices on the Supreme Court for over 150 years. But the Constitution doesn't say how many justices we have to have. So it's something that Congress could change. And packing the court means you don't like the court, and so you're going to add a few more justices so that you can get the results you want. That was tried by FDR many, many years ago. Even though not only was FDR a Democrat and the House and the Senate were Democrats, I think there were 70 senators, Democrat senators in the House. So it was an overwhelming one party. They still couldn't get it through because it was such a bad idea. Because if you do this, what you're really doing is you're destroying the United States Supreme Court. Because if one party says, hey, I don't like the way they're ruling, so I'm going to add 2 or 3 justices, then the next party, when they come in, are going to say, hey, well, I'm going to add 4 or 5 justices to overrule what you did last time. The court is no longer a legal body, an independent legal body. It's now a little legislature, almost a super legislature. and it's just a matter of who's in charge, and they throw their legislators on there and they control it. It will be a decision to destroy the United States Supreme Court. My prayer is that Joe Biden, in this debate this week, will emphatically say he would not court pack, because it's a horrible idea and every American should be against it. The poll I just saw that came out today on this, Francis, was that 60% of even the independents are against it. It's overwhelming that they don't want this, and it would be very, I think, damaging to our country, and I hope that it doesn't happen. To answer your direct question, the way this would work is, let's say one party had the presidency, the House, and the Senate. They could pass this, but we have a filibuster, or what's called cloture, in the Senate. So usually you have to have 60 votes. You have to have bipartisanship to get something through. There is some talk by more of the radical elements of the left that if they get power, they want to force the president and their party to not only pass it through the House, but to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate. And if they did that, if they passed the House, passed the Senate, president signed it, they could do this. I think because of the way the country sees this, I think there would be a massive backlash as they were trying to do this. And I don't think they would get this through. I think a number of Democratic senatorial candidates I've seen have already said they would not support this. So I'm hopeful that this will die, but there are people who really want this, and they have a lot of say in the Democratic Party, and so that's why I think you see Biden kind of trying to play both sides right now. But I hope he will come out and speak against it, because it would be a really damaging thing for our country.
Oh, okay, got another quick break. We'll be right back.
Find out more about Francis and Friends on our website, francisandfriends.com.
I want you to look at these, which we're offering. These are DVDs. The Truth About Catholicism, an expose on the religion of Islam. The Truth About Common Core. The Truth About Seventh-day Adventists. The Truth About Islam, which is an interview with Brigitte Gabriel. The Truth About the Masons. And then The Truth About Mormonism and The Truth About Jehovah's Witnesses. Any one of these for just $10. Any three for $25. Now listen to this, all 8 for just $50. Every Christian needs to know what these cults are all about, and I think this will help you to understand it. Now this is Jimmy Swaggart saying I'm asking you to take advantage, and I'm waiting for your call.
Take advantage of this offer by calling or going online to shopjsm.org.
Kim Coleman, This Could Be the Day from Kim Coleman.
This could be the day. This could be the end of my race.
Solid, riveting vocals from Kim Coleman. Music to celebrate the King of Kings.
I am not ashamed of this gospel.
With every listen, you'll be passionately enthroning the presence of God. Drawing near to God comes quickly with the music on This Could Be the Day from Kim Coleman. To order This Could Be the Day from Family Worship Center singer Kim Coleman, call 1-800-288-8350 or shop for all Family Worship Center music online at sunlifetv.com.
Big changes are on the way for our video-on-demand experience from the Sun Life Broadcasting Network. It's the new SBN Now platform, free to use with no monthly fees. Some of the features will include your choice of SBN programs, Family Worship Center service, and special feature programming. Video archives that are updated and expanded regularly. Visit watch.sunlifetv.com and create a free account.
You're watching the Sun Life Broadcasting Network.
Okay, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're in our last 30 minutes, Kelly, and I was. You made a statement in one of your articles here that I was looking at while we were on break, and that you said that the Supreme Court must clarify Masterpiece and help religious Americans practice their faith. Has that been done, or is that being done?
It hasn't been done yet. For those who don't know, Masterpiece was the cake with the case with Jack Phillips, who was the cake baker in Denver, and they came after him, the Colorado Commission, because he wouldn't do a same-sex wedding cake, because he did custom cakes, and his faith wouldn't allow him to celebrate, gay wedding, and that went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in Masterpiece ruled in his favor, but did so by saying that in his case there was clearly hostility to his religion by the government officials. They had a lot of really nasty statements that showed they didn't respect his religious freedom, and that was used to sort of say we don't allow this type of clear violation of religious freedom. They didn't answer sort of the question for everybody else, though, which is, does a Christian business owner have a right to follow their faith in this way without being punished by some local ordinance or state ordinance even? That hasn't been answered yet. I mentioned our case with Sweet Cakes with Melissa Klein. There's a number of these types of cases right now on their way to the Supreme Court. And it's expected that in the next 2 years, 3 years, maybe even, earlier than 2 years, we will get a decision for the Supreme Court making clear whether business owners have a right to the free exercise of their religion to run their business according to their faith, or whether these local ordinances can be used to try to force them to violate their conscience. Francis, the best way I can describe this to people, and I've been in debates with liberals and others on this, is, look, in none of these situations is there a situation where they're not serving people. On all of these situations, these Christian bakers and florists and people, they're serving people, they're serving everybody. They just can't endorse every message somebody wants them to put on a cake or do something where they're asking them to express something that their faith won't allow. And I really think that we should all be able to agree that, we'll take the example. Do any of us really think that the government should be able to punish people because a black baker, for instance, wouldn't do a cake for the Klan rally?
Right.
I mean, they have a right not to do that. We respect people's right to have their own beliefs, even if they're different. We're a big enough country to handle that. And this idea that you need to punish and force people to violate their conscience and faith is something that I really do hope we're going to win at the Supreme Court, because I think it's foundational to what our country was all about. But Francis, to answer your question, that hasn't been answered yet. We've got all these cases going, and we're hopeful. And I feel better about the justices we have on the court now that really do respect religious freedom, where hopefully that'll end up being a really good decision when we get there.
Can the other side do anything to prevent Amy Coney Barrett from getting the nomination and being enforced? I say that because of what Chuck Schumer was trying to do.
He lost.
Yeah. Yeah, they can try things, but they really can't do anything that would stop her. The only thing they could do something to really stop her would be to convince enough of the Republican senators to not vote for her. What's going to happen is on Thursday of this week, the Judiciary Committee will have a vote, and they will vote her out of the Judiciary Committee onto the floor of the Senate. There are 2 more Republicans on that Judiciary Committee than there are Democrats, and every one of those Republicans have pledged to vote for her after her hearing. So again, that should happen. Some people say, well, what if they don't have a quorum? Because the Democrats say, well, we're just not going to show up, so we won't give you a quorum. Well, I mean, the Republicans can say, fine, we don't have to vote anybody out of Judiciary Committee anyway. We'll just send them straight to the floor. So these kinds of stalling tactics or things that are talked about really don't have any effect. Then if it goes out of Judiciary Committee on Thursday, which I expect, on Friday, the Majority Leader, McConnell, can schedule the beginning of the vote on the Senate floor. And it's my understanding under the rules and how everything works that this could actually get to the floor as early, therefore, as Sunday. And they're expected to be done with this, depending upon how uncooperative the Democrats are. They think the latest date that they will be done with this is maybe the 26th of October. So we're talking in the near future. They should be done. Amy Coney Barrett should be confirmed and should be on the Supreme Court, which I think is really good, not just because she's a great choice, but because, number one, we could have an election contest. There's lots of threats about lawsuits on both sides. The last thing we want is chaos across our country and then a 4-4 tie at the Supreme Court. We need 9 justices. Secondly, though, these big cases regarding the church during COVID and religious freedom, they're going to hit the Supreme Court soon. And I really like the idea of an Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court because she's thoughtful, she's brilliant, but she also really does understand and care about the Constitution and religious freedom. And she's shown that with her decisions in the past. I think she would be great if that big case hits there.
Yeah. Aren't you one of the panel or a part of whomever the president is vetting for the Supreme Court justice? Aren't you part of that, should I say, panel or committee or?
Yeah, we do a lot of research, and not just Supreme Court, but really all the different judicial nominations. So far, the president has nominated and gotten confirmed 220 federal judges. These are lifetime appointments. When you think of out of 800 some odd federal judges and you appointed 220 for life, you can see what a huge shift that is in the courts. But so a person like Amy Coney Barrett, we do all the research, the data on her background, her opinions, the analysis of all those opinions and everything, and we provide that because we want the president and the administration to make good decisions about putting excellent judges on the court. So it really is an honor to be able to do that work and to provide that. And I think the result has been some excellent choices by the current administration.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Tony in California. Tony, you have a question for Kelly Shackleford today?
Yes, I do. I'd like to say hi to the panel and to you, Sister Francis. Listen to you guys every morning. Really enjoy it. Keep doing what you're doing and topping us all. And I'm sure it's affecting and enlightening a lot of people. So thank you. What I wanted to ask you, Mr. Kelly Shackleford, is, here there's a big case in California with Pastor John MacArthur and the Grace Community Church out in the Valley. And he's been fighting the governor here, who has closed all these churches down. And he's the only church that has not closed down. He keeps fighting them. They keep meeting in the church. They had a meeting about a month ago with 1,000 pastors up and down California. And they have decided that on November 8th, the Sunday after the election, they're all going to open up the churches and invite people from the membership to come into the churches and attend church inside the church. Is that going to be something that they're going to be able to do, or are they going to try to stop that also?
Well, there's actually a number of churches that are opening, and that there are a number of actually lawsuits. There's one in Pasadena. There's obviously John MacArthur's church. There's Rob Orr's church, Godspeak. There are a number of these churches who are opening, and they are under attack from these different California health departments or counties or agencies. And what's happened so far is they've been fining them or threatening to fine them. The legal proceedings have all been somewhat delayed until after the election. And none of them have been physically like arrested or shut down in those ways. What they've been doing is assessing fines as a way to try to intimidate them to not have their service. So the problem is California is not a place with a lot of very sympathetic judges on religious freedom. And then after you go from that district court, you go to the Court of Appeals, you're at the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco, notoriously one of the more liberal courts, although under the current president and administration, they have really changed that court. It's almost an even court now, but it's been very well known as being more liberal. Yeah. And so your chances are probably not good to win there. So your only hope is to win at the Supreme Court. The problem is right now you've got 4 conservatives and you've got 3 liberals and Roberts. And so far, Roberts has been joining with the liberals to not take the church cases and provide protection. So I think at least in the short term, until there's an Amy Coney Barrett on the court, for instance, those churches are going to have a hard time in the legal arena winning a final decision. But I think they are able to open up. They are opening up. Even when they're being told what they're doing is in violation, they're fining them, but they're not stopping them from having church. I think the first time we saw a police officer arresting a pastor or doing something like that, I think the backlash would be so great that they're scared of that and they don't want to do that. So what they're doing is they're treading carefully while at the same time trying to control the churches.
Yeah. Let me ask a question. In California, they voted against same-sex. The public, in a public election, voted down a same-sex marriage law. They voted it down, did not want it in the state of California. But a judge overturned the will of the people. I did not think it was possible for a judge to do that, but they did it.
Well, it's kind of what we talked about earlier, Francis, which is judges, their job is to not be a legislature or do what they think is right. Their job is to say what the law says, to look at the original meaning. And the reason our Supreme Court has become so politicized with these hearings and everything else is because the court has been stepping outside of its area of authority and taking political issues into their hands, which they really should not be. The Constitution lists our enumerated rights. Those are the ones that the Constitution protects. If it's not in there, then it's up to the people in their states or locales to come up with what they think is the best laws or public policy on those issues. And I think abortion's a good example. Read the Constitution over and over again. There is no right to abortion in the Constitution. It was a creation of activist judges on the Supreme Court. And to try to strip this issue out of the public discourse and out of really a public debate, I think was a grave mistake, not only because it's wrong and because it's led to the deaths of over 60 million innocent children, but because it's not what our Constitution does. It's not in the Constitution, and therefore judges have no business, creating law. That's not their authority. That's not their job. And it leads to much more unrest and problems, because it's better to deal with these issues in the legislative process. Allow there to be debate. Allow people to discuss the issue and to try to come to some consensus on what we think is right and wrong and what those laws should be. We don't need 5 members of the Supreme Court in some dark room making decisions for the rest of our country.
Okay, like if I was in California and I saw my rights being taken away from me, such as what we've just discussed, then my recourse would be to call someone like yourself and Liberty Institute. And that's right. What the people of California should do, right?
Absolutely. And they, a number of these churches do have counsel. They've got lawyers representing them. Some of these lawyers I know. We've got clients out there that we have right now. A lot of what we're representing right now are Christian schools, because they're actually in a number of these counties trying to tell Christian schools that they couldn't open. And believe it or not, the regulations said things like that you could have 12 children and 2 adults in a daycare. But if you taught them anything, that would become a school and that would become illegal. So it's just nonsense, some of the things they've got in these orders, and we have backed every single California entity down so far when they've tried to tell Christian schools that they couldn't open. We've said, well, this is clearly unconstitutional, it's discriminatory, and we can file a lawsuit or you can let them open. And they've so far, every one of our clients, they've decided to let them open.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking up on the screen over to the side, and every telephone call that we've got's from California. And it's so let's go to Tony in California. You have a question for Kelly Shackleford, Tony? Hello, Tony. All right, Scott in California.
Thank you, Kelly, and good morning to the panel. I have one quick question. Do you guys have a pending case against the NFL? For some reason, they feel like kneeling in the end zone and praying for a few seconds or minutes is not okay, but these irate gyrations by these players, and furthermore, yet they allow kneeling in front of the flag. Want to get your comment on that?
Yeah, there are no cases currently against the NFL. Some of that, there's some stuff that they've said, even about limiting their players going to churches because of COVID issues. That's, we're looking into those things. There was a point where they wouldn't allow them to kneel in a respectful way to God, but they would allow them to do other things. We threatened them with a lawsuit. They backed off of that. But there are still some things that are a little disturbing right now that we're just trying to nail down the facts on. I mean, you can't tell people they can go to the Home Depot and they can go to the, liquor store and they can go to the marijuana dispensary, but don't go to a church. Those kinds of discriminatory, rules would be a violation of employment law. And we could easily litigate those things if we had to. So it's something we're watching, but there's no lawsuits currently going with regard to the NFL or any of the pro teams.
Kelly, can I ask you just one question? Does it take a Christian player, to actually file that lawsuit?
Yeah, it would take somebody who's actually been impacted. If a player was actually either threatened with some sort of workplace consequences, loss of job, punishment in some way, or they were actually in some way punished or affected by those things, then they could bring the lawsuit as an employee saying this is religious discrimination and it violates our federal laws.
So one more question. Tim Tebow was not allowed to kneel in the end zone. Could he file, even though he played like 7 or 8 years ago?
I think it would be it'd be a little late now. Number one, it would probably pass what's called statute of limitations. You're given a certain number of years to bring lawsuits for the violations of your rights. Usually, it's anywhere from 1 year to 4 years, depending upon the statute that you're talking about. So it'd be late. But if it were to happen right now, which again I don't think it would. I think they would allow that. But if it were to happen now, it would be a lawsuit that somebody could bring, and I think it would be successful.
And is that a direct violation of the First Amendment right to freedom of speech?
No, it's the Constitution only constrains the government. So private employers, even including the NFL, are not subject to the Constitution. So you can have a business and say, well, you don't have any free speech here because I'm in charge of this business. But we do have laws that apply across every state in the country regarding employment and not discriminating on the basis of religion in employment. Those do apply to private business owners, and therefore, if you had somebody discriminating against a player or any other employee because of their religion, that would be a violation of what's called the federal law, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Wow. One more important question. Is it against the law to burn the American flag?
No.
Isn't that arson?
No.
Yeah, it's not against the law. It's gone to the Supreme Court, and they actually upheld it. In fact, Justice Scalia was the deciding vote, and he hated it. He thought it was horrible to burn the flag, but he felt as a judge, this is an example of what a good judge does as far as putting their personal beliefs aside. He felt like that the First Amendment free speech clause protected it. Now, many of the other conservative justices disagreed, but he was the deciding vote. One of the things I really love is his wife, Maureen, the entire day around him, without speaking to him, was humming the national anthem.
Good for her.
he had his recompense at the house when he came home.
So
I like that.
let me ask you this one important question, Kelly. If I'm standing on a corner with a paper bag and I'm burning it and setting it on fire, is that legal?
Don't know. It would depend upon the local ordinances, laws, wherever you are. And the way a case that you're referencing would be if, for instance, if they said somebody was burning a flag and they were being punished because it was arson, not because it was the flag, the question would be how they treated other burnings that were similar that weren't of the flag. And if it was something that was neutral, some law that was neutral about not burning things, that would probably be upheld. But if it was clear that they were doing it because it was the flag, then that would be more of a free speech context, and they would probably uphold it under that Supreme Court decision.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much. Let me read this email, Kelly. It says, I was watching your video and about the blind lady in the park, and it just amazes me that the park would tell her that she cannot hand out tracts. What about the libraries in these cities that are allowing transgenders to come in and read stories to little children?
Yeah, it's clearly discrimination.
Yes, it is.
Well, if the library wants to have a room that anybody can use or do a presentation, they can do that. They just have to treat people the same. They can't say you can use one of our rooms. We've had a number of these cases in the past, unless you're using it for a religious meeting or unless you're using it for a political meeting. You can't do that. That's the government discriminating against you for gathering together based on your faith or your ideas, and we don't allow the government to do that. So while they can, now they can also not allow things, obviously these allowing transgender people to come up and do presentations or cross-dressers or all these things, ultimately that's controlled by the library, which is controlled by your government who has that library. And so if you don't like the kind of presentations that are being done, you need to, elect different people that are in charge of your library, because ultimately that it's subject to whether a city or a county or whoever owns that library.
Yeah. Okay, we are running, getting time we're going to have to go, and I'm going to have to, I'm sorry not to be able to take the rest of the calls, but Kelly, right as we're closing, we have a few seconds here, is there something that you would like to share with the listeners, understanding that this is going all over the world, and that you would like to share with our listeners, maybe to protect their rights? And we actually have people all around the world praying for America in this upcoming election. So is there something you'd like to share to the people regardless?
Yes, my first thing is I'd encourage people to pray. We're in a real battle. We really need prayer. God, I really think from what I'm seeing that I'm seeing things I never thought possible in my lifetime with regard to religious freedom in the United States. Very positive things. And it's because of a lot of these judges we're putting on the courts, but it's really having incredible results in opening up and protecting religious freedom. I don't know whether that's because there's a revival coming or whether because the hostility is going to increase. I don't know why. I just know it's happening. So let's be on our knees in prayer. Secondly, I would encourage people, make sure you're getting the information on what is actually happening, especially those in the United States. Easy, I know you just showed our address. Go to our website at firstliberty.org, and it's right at the bottom there. First, you spell it out, firstliberty.org. And if you scroll down a little bit, it'll say, I want to be on the insiders alert. You can get an alert, which is one email a week about what is happening. That's really important because, number one, it'll tell you what you need to be praying about, the big cases. But number two, it will tell you about victories, and it'll begin to, if you share that, if you become sort of a Paul Revere in sharing that information with other people, it'll embolden them to be more willing to step out with their faith. A lot of people don't know about the freedoms they have, the victories we're getting, and this will really embolden people to stand. If we win victories and nobody knows we're winning them, what good does it do?
That's it.
I encourage people to get in that insiders list and become really the teacher of many other people so that they can be all emboldened to live out their faith across the country.
And you please share with the president, appoint more and more of those judges, and let's get them into the offices to protect the American way of life. Thank you, Kelly, for being with us. Thank you.
Brent.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank all of you for being with us, and we've got to close down the program right now. We enjoyed being with you, and I'm sure you were blessed by our special guest today, Kelly Shackleford. Go to his website, get his telephone number, get all the information, his address. So if you are someone that you know needs help in a legal situation, this is who you want to call. They will be looking out for you. We love you. God bless you.
Email questions and comments about today's program to onair@jsm.org. Be sure to join Francis Swaggart on Facebook at facebook.com/Francis Swaggart. Archived programs are available at sunlifetv.com. Francis and Friends is a production of the Sun Life Broadcasting Network.